And a good day to you, Explorer Nation. John Lynskey, your ambassador for Alumni Affairs, here with Season 6, Episode 3 of Looking Back with Lynskey. And I'm proud to say our very first sponsored podcast. Yes, Melissa and I are very happy about this. Albert Barthélemy, board member, class of 91, all-around great guy. He and his family are going to sponsor every podcast from here on out, with all the money going to the Fred Foyo Scholarship. No better cause than that, and no better guest to have on with Fred in mind than English teacher extraordinaire, football coach, Trek coach, Castaways. He's done a little bit of everything for a long time. From the great class of 1998, Mr. Rick Pelegrin. Rick, good to have you here, brother.
Good morning. Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and a good day to you, sir.
Good day to you, sir.
Here we are. So, Rick, long time. We've known each other for a while now, but I don't know this about you. How did you end up? Let's go back to where it all began. How did you end up attending Columbus High School?
Funny story. I followed, and funny that you bring up Fred, because we used to joke about this all the time. I followed the Fred Foyle track. I went to Banyan across the school, and I went to Rockaway Middle School. And then about midway through my 8th grade year, my mom told me to pick a private school. I'm like, what am I picking a private school for? She's like, you have to pick St. Brendan or Columbus. I'm not going to either of those. I was, a public school boy. So I refused to pick. No, I'm supposed to go to, Core Park. And then, so they picked for me, and they picked Columbus, and here I am.
That's really interesting, Rick, given at where we were in the 90s, there weren't a lot of public school kids at Columbus. I mean, not like we have today. So what was it like coming from the public school system, Rockaway, to Columbus? And how many guys did you actually know when you arrived at Columbus?
I think about maybe 3 or 4 came from Rockaway.
Okay.
I remember Walter Sanchez, Jerry Capote, Lester Dominguez, Andy Fajardo.
Okay.
Gus Perez was here. Gus Alfonso was here. They were class of 97. I knew them from Rockaway also. I didn't know a whole lot of people. I knew Matt Panzer, Jason Wood, just from like baseball and all that. But as far as from Rockaway, not a whole lot.
So do you remember your first impressions of Columbus?
I hated it.
Did you? Okay.
Hated it. Yeah. It was the all boy thing. It was just like, it did not fit me. And I remember probably about midway through the second quarter, I just really fell in love with it. It was just like a switch, I finally let my guard down, started really talking to people and making new friends, and I really, really, really fell in love with it then.
Do you remember any particular people, events, activities that allowed you to flip that switch?
I don't know so much about the events. I just really remember just being in class and just having fun in class and just making friends. And it was, like I said, I finally put my guard down, which is what I tell my students. I mean, not so much now because they're seniors, but when I would have freshmen, I would remind them that I was in the same position as them. And it really is, Columbus was an easier place for me to be myself and, put all those walls down and not worry about who you're impressing or what you have to wear and how you have to act, like you could just be yourself. It's just a room full of guys, so it was great.
I think that's the perfect summation of so many guys that are concerned about there's no girls, there are no girls. And then all of a sudden they realize, yes, there's no girls. This is a very good thing.
Yeah.
And the girls will be there after school. And once you buy into that, it makes it easier, no question. So class of '98, there, we both just shake our heads because that is a cast of characters. All our classes have characters, but '98, there's a particular flavor with the class of '98, and you guys are incredibly close. And many of you have gone on to do great things at Columbus. And so you've got to feel good about that, looking back on what your class has contributed to this school.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you say, it does have its unique flavor. And I would say the word inspiring or shocking, but to see the cast of characters that we had in that class, and then to see them all today, and everybody's pretty normal. You're like, man, it's crazy how that happened.
How did that happen? I know it's really something. And that was an interesting time at Columbus, late '90s. There was a certain energy at the place. And you guys certainly created that. You plugged into it. And, you know, a lot of your friends were involved with SAC. The school spirit in '98 was really quite something. And what I loved about it is, and you can talk about this, they supported everything. You're a football player. You're a good football player. Our record was not that good.
Right.
But talk about the influences that football had on you, and particularly let's just get down to the heart of the matter. Let's focus on one of the great teacher coaches of all time, Mike Dean.
How much time do we have? You know,
for Mike Dean, as much as you want, bro.
Yeah. I mean, before we get to Mike, I mean, talking about like the class and the support as far as events and all that, like, I mean, that was the birth of, you know, Phase 2 crew. And yeah. I remember being on the field, and I remember looking back at that student section, and there were times I'm like, you know what? I think I'd rather be up there, man. They're having a lot of fun there, you know. But it was great. No, but I mean, we can go on and on about Mike. Mike was one of the greatest individuals I've ever met. I remember when I walked into his class, junior year. I didn't know I wanted to be in his class, and I walk in, and he's got that hair slicked to the side, and it's my first day, and I go up to him with my schedule, and he's sitting down, and I'm like, "Excuse me, Mr. Dean, I think, you know, I want to phase out of this class." And he just asks for my schedule, and he looks at it, and he goes, "Pelegrin, you're in the right class." And I'm like, "No, sir. Do you think that I could go?" He goes, "You play DB. You're in the right class. Sit down." I'm like, all right. And then I went and I sat, and Jason Wood walked in, and Dak Seacray walked in, and I'm like, okay, I think I'm in the right class.
I'm in the right class.
And
yeah,
man, I mean, he's who inspired me to actually become an English teacher. I mean, just the control he had of the class, yet still having so much fun with it. And you want to talk about old school. I mean, very, very old school as far as strict, as far as intimidating, but intimidating like that father figure that you love him for it. You know, it didn't matter how he acted. It didn't matter your grade. It didn't matter anything. You just loved him for it because you knew that he just really, really cared. I mean, he's just an amazing man. And, you know, on the field, it's crazy. He rarely got upset. You know, he was always very methodical in what he did and the way he spoke to you, which I think kind of intimidated me more. You know, it was always that, man, he's being a little too calm once the top just going to pop off. But man, he was just, I mean, one of the most influential people in my life while I was here.
Yeah, and in mine as well. No question. One of the greatest educators I ever saw, and a great coach. And you're right, he was very methodical in both, because if you can teach, you can coach, vice versa, as you know. Coach Lavelle, on the other hand, had no problem expressing his emotions or his feelings.
Nope. No. And it's crazy because my dad, not into sports, but I mean, it was like the Cuban version of Lavelle was my dad. So it was crazy. So when I started playing, I'm like, this is the Polish version of my father. I mean, this is insane, you know? And you just used to, like, you didn't want to mess up on film, but it's almost like when you were watching film the next day, you were almost waiting for it because you just wanted to see what he was going to call you after that dumb play you made. I'm like, all right, let me see what he says now, you know?
He had one of the great corrections, we'll just say, for you. What was that phrase he used that one time about you?
Was it that I was dumber than 2 boxes of shoelaces?
Yes.
And I guess he was right because I was stumped. And he goes, "You see what I mean?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm done."
You know, it's funny. I still remember that because I had never heard that one. You know, he had some go-tos that were pretty common, but that one I'm going, wow.
And you know what? As fierce as that man was, and as terrified as we were of his dog when he used to bring his dog, and the dog used to chase us when we were running, you know. I mean, and you want to talk about a scary, scary man. Again, still, doesn't matter how much time goes by, and I see him. The first thing he tells me when he comes up to me every single time, "Rick, how's your dad? How's your dad?" Every time. Doesn't ask about me, doesn't ask how I'm doing, anything. "How's your dad?" You know, so he's just an incredible person, man. I love him.
Yeah, and I think it was great that both of us got to experience those guys, you know, and very special men. So I know how I got to Columbus. I know when I wanted to be a teacher. Going to FSU, then later FIU, when did it strike you that you wanted to be a teacher, and why English?
Well, English because of Dean.
Okay.
Hands down, English because of Dean.
Yeah.
And it's funny that you ask because, and I don't know if I should thank you for this or still be a little upset with you, but it was actually you and Annie. It was Mrs. Torres. It's both of you. You guys were hanging outside of her room talking. And I remember I was walking by, and you stopped me and we started talking. And both of you asked if I had ever given any thought into possibly becoming a teacher one day, that you guys thought that I'd be pretty good at it. And I was like, no, not really. And I started thinking about it. And the more I thought about it, the more it fit, you know? So here we are.
Here we are. You know, and it's funny how those random conversations in the hallway, whatever, can really resonate with you. So, you know, you go to college. How did you end up at Columbus? Because everybody's story is a little bit different.
To me, that's all I was going to do. Like I went to school those 4 years already. In my mind, there was no plan B. That was it.
Okay.
You know, I kept in contact with Chris, you know, Bobby and I, you know, close friends. So they always knew I would, you know, visit and stuff. And, you know, I was keeping it fresh in their mind that I was coming back and they were going to have to make a spot for me, you know. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if I pushed my way through or what, but that was it for me.
So who hired you, Rick?
Brother Pat.
Oh, jeez. Describe the interview process, if there was one.
It was just a fun conversation. It was really just a fun conversation. And I guess I don't remember specifics because we were just talking the whole time. And I remember talking to Bobby maybe like a week after and kind of telling him that I was stressed. I didn't know if I got the job. And he goes, "I think you'd have to go in there and slap him in the face in order to not get the job." I'm like, all right, then I think I'm good.
And even then, maybe, you know.
He was that cool, man.
That's awesome. So how prepared, looking back on it, hindsight being 2020 and all that perspective, how prepared were you to teach high school at Columbus?
I don't think anybody's prepared.
Yeah.
You know,
That's the right answer. That's
especially
the
at
right answer.
22, you know.
Yeah.
I was supposed to start in August. And this is where I think I earned my stripes. I was supposed to start in August, and then Pat Call reached out to me that they needed a summer school teacher. And I was like, all right. So I taught summer school for a few weeks, and that class, that was the class. I had JR in that class. I had McDuffie. I had Cordo. I had Ted Marlowe. You know, I rip off the names to teachers here, and they're like, they gave all those kids to you for summer school. I'm like, yeah. And I'll tell you what, it was one of the best classes I had. They were so cool, man. They were really, really down to earth kids. I mean, you could see why they were in summer school, but I mean, they were real cool. And, they put the work in, but I think after that summer school class, the rest was gravy. I mean, it's been pretty easy since.
Well, it's a step up. It's like the kids that come into Columbus as ninth graders who play football, they're there. And so when the rest of the kids come in, they know people, they're connected, they feel at home. And so that summer school, although, trial by ordeal, you got through it. When did you finally start feeling comfortable as a teacher?
Probably year 3. It was, I had freshmen and sophomores. I've had freshmen and sophomores most of my time here. So as far as comfort in the classroom, that was always there because those first few years I coached freshman football too, and some JV. So I had a lot of my players in there. So, the rapport was always there. But as far as comfort overall, probably year 2, year 3, as far as with the faculty and all that, because, especially back then, it was still very different. I couldn't get past the fact that my former teachers, now just a few years ago, were now my colleagues.
Yeah, it's hard.
I remember I could not call Miss Irvine by her first name, no matter how much I tried. There's no way. Well, Rick, you can call me Joe. I'm like, no, I can't. No, I can't.
Yeah, I get that.
And then there was always, that unwritten rule, which, your first few years, you should stay quiet. You should sit back and learn, sit back and, take it all in. And then I'm glad I did that because, by year 3, I really got a feel for things and I really felt comfortable overall.
There's a great story going back to your beginning. What you just said, when you walk in and now these guys that were role models and influencers are in theory your peers, but not really. Give us the PG version of your first English department meeting and Mike Dean.
Is there a PG version of that?
Do your best.
This is pretty tough. So, I mean, and you really got to know Dean in order to get the full gist of this. But I remember Mrs. Savino was our department chair then, and it's my first department meeting ever. And I'm 22 years old, and we're all sitting in a circle. And of course, Mike sits directly across from me. And here I am. I'm a little nerd, so I have a little notepad out, and everything she's saying, and I'm trying to take notes, and everybody's talking, and everybody's just saying things, and Mike's just staring at me from across the circle, and I'm looking at him, and I keep taking notes, and every time I look up, he's just staring at me, and I keep telling him, stop. And I keep on, and feel him, and then out of nowhere, he takes out a piece of paper and he starts writing something. I'm like, oh man. So I'm just taking my notes, and everybody's talking. He just makes a beeline right across the circle, and he slams the piece of paper down on my desk, and he walks back, and I got my pen. I remember I slid the paper over, and I'm like, I don't want to look at this. And I keep on writing, and I look up, and he's looking at me saying, look at it. Look at it. And I turn it over, and it just says, like, say something, you coward. And that's all I'm going to say. I start cracking up. I'm like, no. But he didn't call me.
Welcome to English. And it was a given back then for so many of us, and the younger guys today for that matter, that if you're going to teach, you were going to coach too. And you worked your way up the ranks and everything. Explain your coaching experiences at Columbus and what you learned and some of your favorite moments. And it included track as well, obviously, with Fred. But I mean, you put in a lot of time and, ultimately earned the big one.
Yeah.
So what was that like, Rick?
It's tough, but fun. Again, starting with the freshmen, I did that. I did JV and freshman for about 3 years. And then that was around the time that Bob got sick.
Yeah.
So Alex spoke with me, seeing if I could, come up and work with Bob and stuff. And I mean, absolutely, to not only work on varsity now, but to learn from Bob too. Again, former teacher of mine, and one of my close friends now. It was just, an honor. Then just it was definitely a tough transition. You coach freshmen in JV during that time. You try to get your technique in there, but it's not as, and not comparing it, to NFL players or anything. But man, what was that? What was that receiver's name? He played for Ohio State, and then he was drafted by the Colts. That he said that when he played with Peyton Manning, that Peyton would like call a play at the line that they hadn't run in like 3 years. That again, the playbook was that massive. That the transition was just so tough for him. That's what it was for me, as far as not only different coverages and plays, but just the amount of time and prep and film, and it was just a lot. But the minute I got a little comfortable with it and I started having more fun with it, man, that's exactly what it became. It became a lot of fun. And then you're out there, you're coaching with your friends too, which was fantastic. And we gained success. We started getting better. It was around the time of that John Mosier year. That was a real fun year. But just the type of kid we had. Just so tough. It's funny because one of my first students ever was a senior that year. Mike Houston. Mike Houston is actually my daughter's PE coach now. So how
perfect is that?
It is perfect. It is perfect. Because again, and it's funny because those bonds you make, you just see that they just keep growing and growing, and then you see someone like that in your life later on, and it's like they never left. You're still connected with them. But so I coached for I think it was about 19 seasons. I remember I took a year off, and then took a year off because I got married. Most amazing person ever.
Yeah, you outkicked your coverage.
I outkicked my coverage by a mile, man. I gave that returner more than enough time to run it back. had two amazing girls. And then I realized that maybe coaching was taking up a little bit too much time. So I took a year off. And then the season after that, I don't know if you remember, but you actually came into my room and you said, somebody outside wants to talk to you. I'll watch your class. And normally that means that I did something wrong. I'm like,
Generally, yeah.
And from the 2 seconds that I'm getting to the door, I'm like, what did I say this time? I'm like, oh God. And I walk outside and Dave is out there, done. And he's like, I heard you want to coach again. I'm like, no, I don't. He's like, no, I heard you do. I'm like, I really don't. He's like, well, what do you need? And, we spoke, I told him, about, more time that I need with my family and all that stuff. And everything worked out perfectly. So I came back for that next season. And that was a 2019 team that beat Apopka. So
that night in Daytona, it's hard to describe what that was like.
I look, I get goosebumps now thinking about it, because that was Ari's senior year.
Yeah.
And when the lights went out and Ari's whole Be the Light, the lights go out, and everybody with their phones out. That was a really, really special moment.
It truly was. And it's got to be special too for you to turn on the TV on any given Sunday and see guys you coached playing in the pros and playing at a high level and winning Super Bowls and everything else. That's pretty cool. That's gratifying.
And you know what? It's amazing to see them, but I love the fact that they are such amazing people. When I first got married, my wife, Jess, she would actually help out on the sidelines, and she would actually take pictures of the players and all that. And she told me one day after the game, she goes, so I met a former player of yours. I was like, who? She's like, Dion? Like, really? She goes, yeah, he just came right up to me. He goes, excuse me, are you Mrs. Pelegrin? Hi, my name is Dion Bush, whatever. I was like, man, that is, again, it just shows, the type of kid that comes through here. He he's had nothing but success. I'm so proud of him. I'm so proud of all of them. Josh looks like he's found a new home. Thank God. Had a great game yesterday. So yeah, keep in touch with CJ, a few times a month. So,
no, it's wonderful to have those relationships. And speaking about relationship, different sport, different attitude, everything else. Coaching track with Fred Foyo. It would be remiss of us not to talk about that.
Thank God that I did it. It was a very weird time that I coached track, as far as coaching football and coaching track. That was a very weird time for both programs, as far as like the relationships and all that. But I'm really, really glad that I did coach Fred. I mean, and not so much for the coaching aspect of it, just for the amount of time that I was able to spend with Fred.
Sure.
What an amazing human being. Crazy. I did see him like a father also. And early on when I started teaching here, it turns out that when Fred was right out of high school, he actually used to work with my dad at Sears,
That's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, and he was just an amazing human being. I mean, he would call me just at random nights, hey, I just want to tell you I love you, all right? And I'm like, all right, Fred.
Okay.
We good? He's like, yeah, man, I love you, okay? I'm like, okay. Just a great person. And God, what an and you really didn't understand it until you were in the track world, because you're like, yeah, Fred, and you see Fred as Fred, man, and you always knew that he's a good coach, but when you were in that track world, God, the amount of respect that Fred had, it was just insane. I mean, everybody just had nothing but amazing things to say about Fred. I mean, just what an all-around amazing person.
Yeah, absolutely, no doubt about that. And you learn a lot about people in those 14-hour days at Traz Pal. You really do. And nobody cared more about the kids than Fred. No question.
100% with that. 100%. And just the sacrifices that he made to be there. Just everything that Fred always had going on. More than anybody would be able to handle, and Fred still made time for everybody else.
Yes, he did. Speaking of other legends at Columbus, you were part of Castaways Against Cancer for 4 or 5 years. What was that like, being on the water with the legendary, the Iron Manatee himself, Steve O'Brien? I mean, come on, man.
Do you want the G version of that one too?
The only podcast Melissa and I ever had to edit involved Mr. O'Brien, of course. So yeah, let's try to keep this one as clean as possible.
Okay, man. Just another cool guy. And think about, when you're out there paddling, man, if you, and that's one of the first things that he told me. He's like, don't count your strokes. Don't focus on your paddling, just think and just go. Otherwise, you're going to drive yourself crazy. And there are times that you're really starting to lose it. It's just a lot of this, just the same stuff over and over again. So you have to do something to kill time. So what you do is you just pull up right alongside OB, or pull up right alongside Adam, and just let him go. Just let him go. And it's going to be the same stories that you've heard 62 times, but it doesn't matter because you're not focused on paddling. But man, I mean, talk about somebody who's just very, very, very giving. Everybody in that group is just so giving, and just good, genuine people.
When you were talking, I had a memory flash of how people come so close. You do become, it's a cliche, I know, but you do become family. I remember before school, we had the Admirals Club in Sandy's room, and it was the most eclectic gathering of people you could possibly imagine. Old, young, in between, and total lunacy. But you build bonds in those situations that last forever. And I can't think of another time I laughed so much as when we'd be in there in the morning and you just didn't know what was going to happen next.
I haven't thought about that in a good 15 years.
Yeah, man, exactly.
I've completely forgotten about having breakfast there every morning. This is before I was exercising in the mornings and all that stuff. Like, I didn't have to wake up early, and I would find myself waking up early just to go and spend 15, 20 minutes there.
Just to see what stupidity was going to occur in there. Never mind the kids. You're talking about adults here, in theory.
And that's what these students don't get. Like, I guess students in general just don't get. Like, they see teachers aren't people. I'm like, you guys don't understand that. A lot of the teachers that you guys complain about and stuff, that's not the way they really are. Like, they are really cool people, it's just, they just got to deal with you. I mean, how would you be if you had to deal with you, So, but yeah, man, God, the Admirals Club, I had forgotten about that. Good times. Good times.
Buenos tiempos for sure. And you brought up a very good point, Rick. I think a lot of our teachers, and maybe this helps being an alumni, I always had the feeling with some of the guys that, yeah, they were in charge. There's no question they were in charge, and they're the teacher, you're the student. But there was this tacit understanding that, listen, I was just like you one day, and one day you'll grow up too, and we'll all be in this together. And I think that's what we offer. There's this understanding that I'm the adult in the room, you're the student, but one day we're all going to be together. And that is something I took away and valued and still value to this day.
I just think that a lot of times it's just, maybe people forget that, they technically still are children, but you still have to treat them with respect, and you can't BS them. They see right through it.
Oh yeah.
Just I'm very, very honest with them. I'm incapable of BSing them, and I reason with them. And it does help that I have the seniors and they are men. And I tell them, day one, you want to be treated like a man. I'm going to treat you like a man, but you have to, treat me the same way too. And again, since I moved back, I mean, I've had the seniors and I've had zero problems with them. I mean, they've been great.
Everybody has their preferred grade level. You know this. If I had taught ninth graders, I would have been fired in 5 minutes. Seniors is where I belonged with them. Other people don't want anything to do with the older kids. So we're all different, and that's fine. But I agree, there is something really good about teaching seniors. And there is that understanding. And the vibe in your room is always good. Even when you were teaching the younger guys, and I'd come in and do that whole poetry, what have you. Those kids, they got it. But seniors are different, man. They are.
They are, and again, I think not that you have to take your foot off the gas, but you have to have understanding with seniors, and you can't forget that, it's that expression, the older I get, the better I was,
Yeah.
You hear so many people talking about like kids today are the exact same as they were 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. As far as students, as far as the way they behave, they've always been the same. And we tend to forget that. The older we get, as far as teaching, we tend to forget that we were that age too. We were seniors also. We were the senior that was walking around with, marker on his hand, 35 days left or 34 days left, dying to get out, we forget that. So just as long as I feel that you remember that and you take that into account, you can kind of reason with them, and it just makes life easier. If they're miserable and you're miserable, nothing's going to get done.
It certainly does. And the thing is, I believe kids are the same. Rules have changed, so the kids act differently. But if you put these kids in your classroom when you were a student in 98 or me in 78 or whatever, they'd be the same buffoons we were. Just the rules are different. And so you got to, look, times change. You got to adjust. Yep. That's all. Definitely. You mentioned something a minute ago. In 2020, you guys made the decision to leave Miami and you moved up to Tennessee. And you'd been talking about that for quite some time. So talk about the decision to leave and then the decision to come back. What all went down, Rick?
We left right in the middle of COVID, you know, as far as work. Jess got a great job with Nissan. So we moved. And Tennessee really is a magical place. Tennessee is right out of a storybook, as far as, raising kids and small community. And it's crazy. I actually taught 6th grade ELA while I was up in Tennessee.
No.
Jess was like, "Oh, you're going to get fired on day one." I'm like, it was actually, it was an experience, and I absolutely loved it. I had no idea that I would enjoy that so much, and I absolutely loved it. My drive to work every day was, if there was one car on the road, that was a traffic jam. Yeah. I mean, deer and coyote. I mean, you would see all of that. And then, some time passed, and, you start thinking about family and, all that. So, we discussed, coming back and put an offer on a house, and we honestly didn't think they were going to accept the offer, and they did. So here we are. And Dave and everybody in the English, everybody really wanted you to come back and made it happen. And, so what was it like coming back? Was there a sense of rebirth, or what did it feel like? Well, it was completely different. Remember that I was always a freshman, sophomore teacher when I came back.
Yeah.
They told me I'd be teaching AP Lit with the seniors. And I was like, all right, so how many classes of AP Lit am I going to have? They're like, oh, it's always been 2. It turns out it was 4.
Ah,
Uh,
okay.
yeah. So it was a bumpy transition at first, just as far as content, just as far as expectations, as far as I've never done this before. I'm not going to lie to you. There is that anxiety as far as, okay, now these are the AP seniors. I've been dealing with freshmen, and I don't want to say that you doubt yourself, but it's the unknown. And no matter how much you prepare yourself, you don't know how you're going to react until you're put in that situation. And no, and it's been fantastic. I mean, the material that we go over, it's material that I can choose just as long as it's at an AP level, but
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
something that I can find that they would relate to also. Because again, if you have to teach something that you don't enjoy, it's going to be tough to teach it. Uh,
correct.
so it's very easy for me. I'll say easy, but it's a lot more fun to teach, the stuff that I enjoy teaching, because then I can get into it, which means I can kind of get as many of them as I can into it. So it has been extremely different, which I guess kind of helps. It's almost like I'm here and it's like a part 2.
Yeah, and I don't think, it'd be better if more people had the opportunity to challenge yourself after 20 years, whatever, to do something different because it's so easy to get complacent. It's
Definitely.
human nature also, particularly at a school if you're teaching the same thing every year. So to do something different, there's nothing wrong with a challenge a little bit later in life. And you've answered the challenge. You got a great classroom, a killer view of the Carter Burris Perpetual Oak.
That's
You,
cool.
it's just awesome up there.
And I have amazing neighbors. I
You
have
do.
I have Bowman, I have Manassas, and I have Weber. I mean,
What more? Say no more. I mean,
we're
think,
all the way
think
over here. A Thunderdome over here. So
different area code. Things could happen out there, and people may not. Things do happen out there.
who knows about it?
That's okay. That's okay. All right, let's have a little fun here. Let's do a little lightning round, either or kind of things. You and I are both movie buffs and reading buffs and all that stuff. So I'm going to give you a choice. All right, let's start with movies. Old School or Animal House?
Oh, that's not fair.
No, it's not.
I'm gonna have to go with Animal House.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Platoon, Full Metal Jacket.
Oh God, you're not making it easy. God, but we quote those evenly, so
I
I'm
got-
gonna have to go Full Metal Jacket.
wow, that's a surprise. I
I'm
thought
gonna
you were
have to
going to go
go.
Platoon.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go Full Metal Jacket.
Uh, Fargo or Big Lebowski?
No, well, I gotta go Big Lebowski. Even though,
Yeah,
man, you said Fargo, so I was already thinking Fargo, and then you had to throw in my favorite movie. So of course, it's got to
of
be the Big
course, man.
Lebowski.
Yeah, absolutely. T.S. Eliot or Robert Frost?
Go Frost. Go Frost.
Nice. I
Yeah,
I wasn't expecting that one either.
really.
No, I just, yeah. Anyway,
Yeah,
there's no wrong answer here.
right.
Shakespeare or Tennyson?
Oh, I gotta go Shakespeare. I love Shakespeare. I'm not Limforce, and
Well,
we're
no
going
one
over
is.
Hamlet now. And I always say, listen, I'll answer as many questions as I can. Most of them I won't be able to, and I'll call Bob. All right, and
Yeah,
Bob will. Bob, if I call Bob, Bob's gonna be in here before I hang up the phone. So here's what
no,
happened.
he loves that stuff, man. No question. No question. Tim O'Brien or Jack Kerouac?
Oh, I gotta go Tim O'Brien.
Yeah, man.
I
And I
gotta.
love Kerouac, but Tim O'Brien, come on.
What I mean, and cool thing, Tim O'Brien's daughter asked him once. He's like, Dad, how come all you write about is the war? And he goes, because I'm really good at it. Why would I try anything else? I'm like,
Perfect answer. Perfect answer. Dave Matthews or Dead and Company?
I proposed to my wife to a Dave Matthews song. So
That's what I figured.
It's got to be Dave.
Jimi Hendrix or Jimmy Page?
Jimi Hendrix.
Okay.
Jimi Hendrix.
I
thought you were going to say Jim Morrison. I'm like, oh, I got to go with Jim Morrison.
No, we stuck with the 6 string there. Ronnie Lott or Tiny Troy?
Didn't Lott like cut his own finger off once?
Yes, he did.
Then I got to go with Ronnie Lott. Cut it off, Mick.
Do the Eagles win the NFC East?
I mean, the Bears would have helped yesterday, but I mean, you have Tyreek Stevenson in the end zone, John at the crowd when the ball snapped, and they give away the Hail Mary at the end of the game. But I don't know, man, because Jaden Daniels is just on fire.
Yeah.
But the last 3 games, Hurts hasn't turned the ball over. Defense looks like they're playing ball now, and the offense looks like what the offense should look like. I mean, they scored, what was it? It was 37, basically
37.
3 quarters, because that first drive of the first quarter for the Bengals took like 10 minutes. So I'm going to say,
Fly, Eagles, fly.
Go Birds.
Go Birds. Education seems to run in your family. Your sister's an educator too. Barbie, what do you attribute that to?
Chance. My sister studied to be an accountant, and then she decided she wanted to teach. And she started teaching next door. She's a principal now at Sheldon. She's doing extremely well. And then it's not like I had that in mind when I decided to become a teacher either. It's just chance, and it's funny because it's just the 2 of us. I mean, you look at the rest of our family, and it's just us as far as teachers. Just luck of the draw.
Could you see yourself doing something else
from this point, or if I could go back?
Well, either way.
I always had in my mind be a firefighter.
Oh, I could see that. Yeah. Given your love of working out and everything, sure, I could see that.
I always thought that would be fun. From this point moving forward, you know what? I always joke around with Jess that my dream is to move to a town in the middle of nowhere and open up a little hardware store. Run a little hardware store.
Oh, I can see it.
Yeah, man, just that. But just something low key,
Yeah, that's a while away though.
Yeah.
This is the standard question for everybody. Because when I was in school, when you were in school, I mean, I think we sort of knew who, Marshall and Champagne was, but, whatever. It wasn't really stressed. We were living it. But now, with the emphasis on it, what does being Marist mean to Rick Pelegrin?
It means that I can incorporate my beliefs in my teaching.
Sweet.
And I don't have to stress that. Although I loved teaching the 6th graders in Tennessee, it was a public school. So I had to really worry about the whole moral aspect of my teaching. And when you're dealing with literature, God, that's such a cool aspect to throw in there as far as morals. And then you can tie in morals, to all aspects of your religion, of any religion, just the fact that you can bring up your own faith, you can bring up Jesus Christ, you can bring up all of that while you're teaching. I mean, it just makes the lesson that much more effective, that much more impactful.
Oh, one more lightning round question. Okay. Daughters or sons?
Well, I'm biased.
Yeah, I know. So was I.
I'm biased. Daughters are the best, man. I mean, look how amazing daughters are that they even got me to coach soccer for 2 years. I was coaching.
What do you know about soccer?
Absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. But I'll tell you what, those 5-year-olds, they had their pursuit angles on that soccer field, and they were tough, man. I would tell them all the time, I don't care what I want you to slam your body into them to take that ball. They're little 5 years old looking at me. I'm like, just go.
What is wrong with this guy?
Everything.
Like Vince Vaughn coaching soccer. Yes.
Yeah.
Mike Dean would be proud. Dean's dogs. And thank you for keeping that legacy alive too. By the way, very important. Listen, man, this has been fun. We've been friends for a long time, and I look forward to see what you're going to continue to do at Columbus. And I wish you nothing but the best. And thank you for being our first sponsored guest. That's pretty cool. So thank you to Albert Bartholomew and Gloria and Kate and Andrew. Great family, great guys, great cause indeed. So Explore Nation, I hope you've enjoyed this conversation with the one and only Rick Pelegrin. I look forward to many more. And so until next time, it's been Buenos Tiempos and Adelante, boys. Thank you, Ricky.
Thank you.